You're listening to Story Struck. I'm Rachel, an editor and writing coach.
And I'm Nino, a ghostwriter and book coach. Welcome to our curious community where we dive into everything books and writing.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Welcome, everyone, to our first story spiral. So we decided that this season we were going to have these moments where we go down a spiral, go down the rabbit hole of a story that we choose in different genres, with different perspectives to just kind of, discuss the storycraft of it all, the character development, what we liked about this, what we didn't like, how we can take these pieces for our own writing practice, things like that. Our first story spiral, we chose Legends and Lattes by Travis Baldree. And so if you have any books that you want us to go down a story spiral for, if you have any suggestions or be like, this would be a great one, let us know, drop it in the comments. We chose Legends and Lattes for our first story spiral because it is a very popular, especially when it first came out, it was a very popular cozy fantasy. And my cat's driving me crazy. And it was one, anytime I looked up a cozy fantasy with sapphic characters, this was the first one to pop up. And so I think it was my mom actually read it first. She started getting really into cozies. And I'm just I don't know, with the whole orc thing, and it's written by a guy, and I'm it's a sapphic story written by a guy, and I'm just immediately, ew. And so she actually read it. She's like, no, it was super, super cute. I think you'll really like it. He did a really good job. You should go read it. So I went and I read it and I enjoyed it. And I went down and started going down more cozies after that. And just because my cozies to that point was just TJ Klune and Heather Fawcett. And which y'all know, I love me some TJ Klune. Love him so much. And Heather Fawcett with her Encyclopedia of Fairies books are my soul. This is my soul. So I thought this would be a really good one to do because it has a lot of pros. It has got some cons, but it's got something very refreshing about it, which I personally enjoyed, how he wrote women. And he could have done some very, very stereotypical things, and he didn't. So we will discuss. But before further ado, Rachel, what is your opinions? What is your star rating, your overall review?
Yes. So I will preface this by saying I love cozy. I read a lot of cozy fantasy, cozy mystery, cozy romance. I'm all for it. So I went into this book thinking I'm gonna freaking love this because I also enjoy D&D style stuff. So you're getting some of that vibe from it, video games types things. And I'm okay, this sounds kind of a little bit of maybe in game terms, an Animal Crossing with a coffee shop where it's, run by a fantasy creature and people are coming, you got to figure out their coffee, get their story, things like that. So I was okay, this is going to be really super fun. Yeah. This wouldn't have even gotten a rating because if we weren't reading it for the podcast, I would have DNF'd it. But I went through and decided that we were doing this and I was going to read it like a writer, which is an episode that we will have down the road of how to read a book like a writer and use the stories to inform how you're going to write your stories to discover yourself. So that's another episode. But since I did go through and finish reading it, I gave it 1.5 stars. So it was either that or no stars because I would have not given it anything. You would have given it 3? All right.
I think I would have given it 3. Putting it in the category of cozies and stuff, I feel like I would have given it a 3. So it's good. Also, quick note, I listened to this book. Rachel read it with her eyeballs. So
yeah, and I'm curious to hear about that.
That colors the experience a lot more. So,
yes. Yeah, we had a brief chat before this kind of about that. So I think that'll be something really interesting to touch on when it gets to the hang-ups that I had. So I'm not saying the book was awful, the book was bad. It just was not for me. There were things I liked, but then there were things that just completely took me out of the story. And so we'll kind of dive into that and I'll look at it right from that writer's perspective and a reader's perspective of if there were some of those tweaks in this book, I think I would have absolutely loved it.
Yeah. One thing that I really liked, so I guess we're just gonna dive into the story spiral because
Let's
we don't
go.
have a structure really for this yet. So this is us just like book talking. So one thing that I really liked that I think a lot of people can take away from this book, right? So you have this. Also, fair warning, if you don't have common sense, we're going to have some spoilers in this. So if you haven't
Lots
read
of
the book and you don't
spoilers.
like spoilers, don't listen to this episode. But I know that, nowadays we
Yeah,
have to
we're
say
gonna be
those things
spoiling
because
everything.
we're literally going down the entire rabbit hole of this book, so you will get spoiled. Andy Hoozle, one thing that I thought he did really, really good that I think can be studied, right? Who wants to integrate something of the modern world within, was it medieval time period? Right? Because a lot of fantasy takes place in more of like a medieval kind of vibe. And that like she's building a business. She's making lattes. Has iced coffee. Like she gets ice. There's all these components of this book that we would automatically see in a modern lens, right? To make a latte, you need the machine that goes shh, right? And you have to have to have ice. Like, where are you going to put the ice? You need an ice box, right? The air conditioning. She's got air conditioning in it, right? And so I thought, did a really, really great job at adapting those things for that world, right? The air conditioning isn't powered by electricity. It has just like this like fan motor thing that happens and like, right, there's no electricity in this world. But she has, because of the gnomes and how creative and innovative they are, and he explains how these mechanisms work in this world. And I thought he did a really, really good job at that and adapting. How do we have modern concepts within a mythological, medieval kind of world? So I think that's a really, really great reference point for it.
And that's interesting because that's one of the things I did not like. So
Really?
yeah. So I do agree. He did a really good job of explaining it in terms of that. So, right, like the air conditioning, it was like powered by the heat. So, right, like that is something that they could have back then. Heat pushes air, and so it would cause the vent to go and pull the air out. But we knew that as like a vent fan or an air conditioning, like something like that we knew in like modern terms. And for me, when I saw that in the book, I was like, what's even the point of that? Like, did that even need to be in there? Like, that
It's
just kind
'cause
of
it's
yanked
hot.
me out. It's because it's hot, but like every other thing is hot. They have fires blazing in there. Like, that's how they heat things. So for me, like, I was just kind of like, this just felt really unnecessary for like that one particular thing. But I really enjoyed the explanation of the coffee maker, though. Because that's the same thing. I was like, "Oh, they have like this coffee machine and they're going to make lattes and how's this going to work?" So that I think was really neat because they did talk about having to like fuel it with fire. And so like, or oil or whatever. So that made sense to me. I was like, okay. I was like, if he invents electricity in this, I'm like done. I can't even. So I did enjoy the explanation for that. The vent fan made total sense in my mind, but I felt like it didn't add any value to the story. So I felt like it didn't really need to be there. And it was just kind of one of those things just to have a thing in there to take up space. So that I just really didn't enjoy. And then the other thing that I thought was different was the quote unquote electric lute that the musician had because he like came in, yeah, and it was supposed to like sound like an electric guitar kind of sense is what I got.
Like they had some sort of weird amplifier or something,
Yeah,
right?
so and like they explained it like again kind of in that technology type thing. Um and then he came back and he was playing like the regular lute and people loved it and eventually she's like, "Why don't you come back and try playing your other one?" And again, I'm like, "But why did we need that? Like couldn't it have just been you have your musician doing live music? Why do we need the component of also making that odd and different when you already have a completely unique concept that nobody's ever seen here with a coffee shop?" So that kind of like was a push and pull in there that I was just kind of like,
And
what just happened?
also with the electric guitar moment and stuff like that, it doesn't give coffee shop vibes.
No.
Right? Just an acoustic guitar or a lute would
Yes.
be very aligned with a coffee shop. We don't usually hear, like, if you go and you see live music at a coffee shop, it's usually not somebody with an electric guitar
Yeah,
unless,
right. That to me is
I mean,
not
I've never seen
cozy.
it, but Yeah,
Yeah,
it doesn't quite fit the vibe.
exactly. Yeah, so that's I think
Mhm.
that might have been it. Maybe it was the vibe with that too, and I'm like, I wanna just, like, go sit in, like, a coffee shop with just some chill music in the background, and, like, that's kind of what the people were enjoying, so, yeah, that was a weird moment for me.
Yeah, it was like but did he do it at night? Like, cause I don't remember.
I think he was, like, during the day, and then
It
it
was during
wasn't
the
very
day?
clear. Then she asked him to come at nights, but I don't remember the coffee shop ever being open at night, and that gets
Yeah.
into one of my hangups we'll kinda dive into later, but it was very unclear exactly what the hours were of the coffee shop, right?
Mhm.
Like, we know, like, she had her early morning people, and then a
Right.
lull, and then she had people kind of, like,
In
closer
the
to lunch.
afternoon.
But then it sounded like she closed because they would close and then her and Tandri, which was her assistant, would go and they would eat dinner together. But I thought the guy was supposed to be playing music at night. But as far as I know, it was never open at night because they were always going out and eating dinner together.
Mm.
So my brain can't wrangle
Little
around that.
continuity
Yeah,
issue
continuity
there.
issue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, which as we had been, just messaging through your reading of it and stuff, seems to have been something that I did not catch.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I did want to talk about was I know you had a big issue with the lack of description,
Hmm.
especially because you were reading it with your eyeballs, right? And I listened to it whenever, and by the way, Travis, what's his last name again?
Baldree, if I'm saying it right.
Baldree. Travis Baldree is an audiobook narrator. And that's been his profession, and he decided to start writing his own books. And so he narrated his own book. And so which I thought was really cool because you as an author know your characters better than anyone. And so, you know, switching the tone of the voice and doing the different voices for the different characters really painted a picture for me listening to it. And so you have one of the characters, Cal, who I guess doesn't have a very detailed description when you read it, but because he had a voice, I had a very clear image in my head of what he looked like, which was not actually accurate to the species that he is. You want to
Yeah,
talk a
that
bit
was an
about Cal?
interesting one. Yeah. So I will say that I think Travis being an audiobook narrator really came through in his dialogue. And I will say that is something I absolutely loved in this book was the actual spoken dialogue because I could look on any page and I could tell what character was talking, even if there wasn't like a dialogue tag, because each of the characters had their very own distinct voice that I even got just within the written text. We'll dive back into the kind of my challenge I had with dialogue later, but we'll stick with the description now. So description was one of my really, really big hangups with this book as a whole. So I am a very visual person. I don't want you to go into like needless pages of like description, like you don't have to do that. It bogs stuff down and can slow it down, but I at least want the starting of a picture of what something looks like. And I will, after we talk about Cal, I'll go to another spot in the book that really has a great example of where this description really confused me. So let me do Cal, then we'll talk about the other ones. So where are we here? So we have that he's a man of smaller stature appeared hauling a wooden box of tools as half as large as himself. His ears were long, body wiry, skin leathery and olive, with a flat cap pulled low over his brow. You didn't see Hobbs often in cities. Humans disparagingly called them pucks and shunned them to keep them to themselves. And then on the next page, when she goes to shake her hand, she says, "Hi, I'm Viv." She held out her hand. Calamity, I forgot that was his full name. I was like, how's Calamity? Calamity. All right. So we have Calamity. We have his full name only mentioned once. Why do we even need to have that? We could just have him be called Cal the whole time. So Calamity, his own calloused paw was swallowed by hers. So you didn't realize that he was like a creature, right?
Had no because one of the things he does is he just says a hob. And I'm like, oh, that must be some sort of descriptor of like
Like
maybe
maybe like a
an
hobbit or something.
older
I don't
guy
know.
who's like
Yeah,
hunched
older guy.
over. I don't know. Or, or like he says a ram, like a ratkin and stuff like that. And so like there's all these terms that I'm just like, I'm just accepting what they are because I'm listening to a book while I'm driving. I'm not Googling what the heck a ratkin is. while I'm driving, you know? And and stuff
I
like
love
that.
the
And so, like,
raccoon. It's so
right?
funny.
And, like, so when it said Hob, it just, like, went in one ear and out the other because I'm like and then it just referenced paw, and I'm just like it didn't I'm like, "Oh, they shook hands. It's fine." I had it never ever clicked because of because it's those two words that describe, I guess, like, what kind of being he is, and it just did not click in my head, and so based on the voice he did as well, like, I got this old skinny miner guy, who has like the fluffy white hair on the side, but is completely bald, who's like kind of like hunched over from all the work he did. And he's like really scrawny and he's kind of short because he's hunched over. Like, I had a very, very clear image of what this dude looked like in my head. And like, he said like long ears. I'm like, oh, so he's got like the old man ears that
Man
are
ears,
like
I love it.
droopy, right? Like, like the old man ears where they're really big and they're like saggy earlobes and stuff like that. That's what I saw in my head. And so especially with like the voice that he did with it with Cal, like I'm like, okay, this is what he looks like in my brain. And then you were like, oh, and he's a hob and he has a paw. I'm like, he's got a what?
Yeah, and I'm like, then I'm thinking, like, he has paws, and like he's doing this really intricate woodwork, and I know it's fantasy, but I'm like trying to picture in my head like how he's doing this because, and then like in my mind, a hob,
Without
I thought
thumbs.
would have like actual hands, like or like a what do you call it, a puck? So when I think puck, like I'm thinking puck like Shakespeare puck, right?
Mhm.
Like they're still mostly human, but they have like other features. So like they have hands. So I was very confused. And then I will also say there's a sentence here that kind of threw me for a minute. And it was his own calloused paw was swallowed by hers. And then I was like, wait, she has paws? Like the way the sentence is written is that
Because of
like
how
his
it's
paw was
written.
by her paw, and I'm like, what? Huh? Because I'll tell you what, we're on page 19, and I have no idea what Viv looks like unless there was cover art. There has been
Right,
no
'cause
description of her, like her skin color, what clothes she wears, even her sword. Like, she has this big, massive sword, and later on, we still don't know what Viv wears, what Viv looks like, what her hair is like, nothing. And to
except
me,
for her underbite.
except for her
Like, or
underbite.
not
Yeah, we
showing
get her underbite,
her bottom teeth. Like, she tries
and
not
that
to
was a
show her
great
bottom teeth.
person. Yeah, and that's part I do like, and we'll get into a little bit of her character development, but I feel like the character development was really lacking. But so, like, the description, like, even just her sword, we know an orc is big, right? But I'm like, all right, she has this
Mhm.
big sword, and the sword, like, is on the wall. It does different stuff, but how big is that sword? If she's huge, is that sword, like, 5 foot tall? Like me, I just wanted a little bit more to give me more of a grasp of it. And, like, for her clothing and stuff, I would have loved to see, like, just a sentence or two here and there to see her evolution, because she's coming from
Mhm.
being this bounty hunter to totally reinventing herself. So, like, is she doing all of this in her bounty hunter garb? Because there's a big thing in the beginning about her
Mm.
wanting to appear softer. And so she's watching when she smiles that like her underbite doesn't go, she doesn't look
Right.
as scary. So is she experimenting, and now is she trading in like her leather bounty hunter garb, which I'm just guessing that's what it is because I don't know, for maybe some lighter cotton clothes and an apron? And how does she feel about that? And then as the story evolves and she realizes that she still is part of who she was, but she's becoming someone else too, does she maybe then don a combination of that? So
Mhm.
maybe like she has a leather apron instead of a cloth apron because that pays homage to what got her to where she was. So just like kind of little things like that would have done so much for me. Like even like the old lady that we see, like I think she pops in on page like 8 or 9, the neighbor. All we
Yeah.
know for her, basically, she's old and she sweeps her, but she pops in all the time for things. And I was like, I just would have loved a little line, and we could have used that line for character development. So, like, we could have just had her go up and see the old lady, and when she gets closer to talk to her, it could have been something like, I don't even remember the lady's name now. Lainey, I think it was. So she could have gone up
Yeah, there
and
it
just,
is. Lainey.
saw and said, the old woman was brushing her stoop until it polished like marble, I don't know, whatever, wearing a long cotton dress with a apron embroidered with daisies. My hands, they could wield, was it black? Something, wield my sword. I forgot the sword. Blackbud. They could wield Blackbud like no tomorrow, but there's no way that they could handle an embroidery needle as deftly as this lady. Like, that would have just given us a little bit of a picture of what that old lady looks like, the kind of clothes that people in this town wear. And then it also would have given us a little bit of Viv's personality as well, where she's like seeing this and she's like, oh man, am I ever going to fit in here? Like, I got the sword on my back. This lady's wielding a needle to do her thing. And then like we also have this juxtaposition, right, of a big sword and a little needle. And they're both doing like these women's work, this expression of themselves, where her expression of herself right now is still the sword, where the expression of this lady is totally different and kind of that peaceful life that she's hoping for. And, maybe she's going to trade the sword in for the sewing needle.
Do you remember if Lainey was human or not? Because I don't. I just envisioned
human.
A lot of people human.
A lot of them were human.
Like, there was a lot of humans that I don't think were actually humans in the book in my brain. I looked up what a hob looks like because I don't know. I didn't look it up. I didn't see. They have hands.
Okay, because that's what I thought they had hands. Like, so I was very confused.
I'm just like I have my phone in my hand and it's just like all these different types of hobs, these different styles. They're like little goblin guys, and like this is the only one that looks more like British. It says British fairies, a hob, and it's like more of like a puck with the goat kind of head, the goat legs and stuff, but the human hands and human arms and human torso, which, I mean, they didn't say he had horns, and then I'm looking at all these other ones and all of them have hands that I can see.
Yeah, so that's why I was confused. I was like, I thought that they had hands. I was picturing that. So that just kind of, I was like, wait. And I think that like we got more description of the art of making cinnamon rolls and the sensory experience of that than we got for anything else in this book. Like, this book is about coffee and the lattes, like legends and lattes. Like, the coffee is the big thing. I know way more about the cinnamon rolls and the baked goods in this book than about the coffee experience. And so I'm not a big coffee person. Not a coffee person. I don't drink coffee at all. But I would assume like we would get a lot of description about the sensory experience of that. Like,
the aroma.
A little bit more. I mean,
it's just like, it's like nutty and this and
So maybe so I don't know. I just thought that was weird. So I have one last thing for character description that I want to share, and then we can move on to maybe we'll switch to some nicer things, some things that we liked, and then we can dive back into some other stuff because there was stuff that I really liked in here. So this was another character description one, and this is when her coffee machine is being delivered and one of her old buddies delivers it to her.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so when they returned to the shop, an enormous gnomish crate sat out in front. Waiting atop of it, legs dangling, sat a sturdy dwarf Viv knew well. Rune, she cried, what in all the hells are you doing here? He leapt down and approached, tugging nervously at his braided mustache. Just making a delivery to an old friend, he said. Come here, you old stump, she said, opening her arms wide. His face broke out into an expression of relief, and he embraced her. Have to say, wasn't so sure you'd want to see me the way you left. She got down on one knee to bring their faces closer to level. I'm sorry about that. If I stopped to explain, try to lay it all out, I thought I'd talk myself out of it. Wasn't fair to you or the others, she shrugged helplessly. All right, so that, we got some good description. Like, that is totally perfect for me. For Rune, description of him is good. I can picture him, a dwarf is small, he's got a braided mustache, and then we see a little bit of like that emotional tension between them where he's kind of feeling relieved. But I would have liked, what did that expression of relief look on his face? But that's not my big thing with this scene. That would just be one little touch of like, she see his shoulders kind of like go down, like, because an expression of relief could be a lot of things. So I would have just loved a little bit of that. But my hang up here, we know that she's super crazy tall. Like, one thing she mentioned, she's like 3 feet taller than like normal people or something like that. Now we have a small dwarf, and it says that she has to get down on her knee for them to be eye level. So if she is opening her arms to hug him, and he's like way short down here. How is she doing that? Like, is like he hugging in her face in her nether regions? Is she stooping over to hug him? Is he jumping up and she's hugging him in her arms? Like, all of that would give us so much more about that relationship between them. Or just make it simple, have her kneel down first and then they hug. And that's just kind of like little hangups in my mind because I visualize things. And so that might not bother other people, but it bothers my brain because maybe it's the autistic in me. I'm like, that doesn't make sense. I don't like it. I can't understand it. So, like, some of these things are probably some of my isms of how I visualize the story and I see, like, that's out of sequence. Like, she needs to kneel first. We can't do that. So, I don't know.
Which is why you're an editor.
Right?
Because that didn't even register, that didn't even cross my mind. Even though like hearing it back with like my brain fully turned on and thinking about it as a writer or whatever, like, oh yeah, that actually like was his face in her stomach,
Yeah.
was it like, oh, when you hug like a child, was it that situation? Like, was he so short he was hugging her? Because, like,
yeah, is he just hugging her leg?
My
Like, it would have been
perception-
cute.
right, like my perception of dwarf to man is Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
Right?
And
Like
then you got
Gimli,
orc even taller.
right, and like Gimli was like waist high with like Aragorn and Legolas.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so you have an orc who's even taller, which would bring him like thigh level in my brain. And so, even if she's down on one knee, like she would be, probably because also broader and stuff,
Yeah.
So I can definitely see how your autism brain was like, wait, no, you said this though, because you take things a little bit more literally, where I'm just like, off in the ether here. And I'm just like, well, they hugged. It must have just worked. And I think a lot of times that's how people are when they're reading. They're probably more often like, okay, yep, they hugged. And then they're talking. And then she just happens to be on her knee and it's fine. And they like probably move on. And that's probably how
Exactly.
more often like
yes.
people are receiving it, because people are usually like when they're reading or they're listening and stuff like that, it's not like full. And also turns out not everyone sees it in their brain like a movie.
Yes, that is very true. There's a lot of people that don't. And so that's like what we're saying. Like, this isn't necessarily right or wrong. Each
Right.
person's going to be different. And this is a great way to learn how you as a reader and how you as a writer operate. Because for
Right.
me, I need to have that. Other people, they couldn't care less if they had that.
And that's the other thing too. Like, so my brother-in-law, we always talk about like the reason why he loves Stephen King so much is because Stephen King has insane amount of detail in his writing. And like he'll have an entire paragraph that's just detail about the surrounding. Instead of just a line, which is what we more commonly see. Like, oh, it was like this and this and this, and then we know and stuff. My brother-in-law, he has to have that detail in there in order to get a sense of what's happening because he cannot visualize it. And like, I just heard a voice and I'm like, yep, I know exactly what this man looks like.
Yeah.
It was wrong, but that's what happened in my head, And so, whenever I think people who are more highly imaginative, they don't necessarily need that with like, but then other people really do need that detail. And other people just like that detail. They're like, well, if he looks like this in my head, but he's actually looks like this, I'm picturing the wrong thing. And so, that can pull you out, right? So if you're picturing this old like miner guy as Cal, and then you hear them say paw, you're like, wait, what, paw? And you catch that and it pulls you out of the reading. Right? It's just like, huh? So, that's why we want at least a certain level of description, because while there's people like me who just like all of a sudden and stuff, there's also people like my brother-in-law who need that description in order to know. And then people like Rachel who can very much visualize everything, but needs that detail to be like accurate. Like, no, I can visualize it, but I need it to be an accurate visualization.
Yes. And there were some like spots where the description was good. As you guys can see, like I'm a little extra and I had tons of notes in here. So I'm trying to find that's That's all my conclusion now. So I have to say I absolutely loved the Ratkin or Ratikin, whatever it was. Like,
Yeah,
the
Thimble.
character was so cute, and, like, you could tell from the description that this was, like, a little tiny thing, and I loved these little stuff, like, just, like, little voices. I was like, "Oh my god, I wanna take you home." And so I thought that that was so much fun with that.
And I liked all of the cooking description.
Yes. Oh,
I
I was
kind
so
of
hungry.
Yeah, I was, like, craving some sweets after listening to certain scenes, like
Mhm.
the thimblets that they had that sounded like
Yes.
biscottis. I'm like, I haven't had a biscotti in a real long time. I could go for a chocolate biscotti."
Yes. All right. So here's I loved this description that Viv gave of the coffee, but then this was interesting. We got kind of one paragraph of her describing how to make the coffee, but then we have like 1 to 2 pages description of making the cinnamon rolls. So I don't know if it's just cinnamon rolls are more exciting, things like that, but like this was really good. So Viv dug out a handful of coffee beans from one of the sacks, crushed them in the mortar, and poured the grounds into a tube of linen. She stretched the tube over a mouth of one of the clay cups, and when the kettle whistled, she slowly poured the boiling water through a little at a time. "Is that a lady's stocking?" asked Cal. She glanced at him. "It's clean. I don't wear stockings." Again, we're getting a little bit of her in this because she has these stockings, but she doesn't wear them. So that
Mhm.
line I loved. And do 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 do. So, and then she kind of goes on to continue describing making that. So this is before she has the coffee machine. So she's just like basically making her own version of like a little percolator to brew the coffee. But like just that little tiny bit of description, just those few sentences, that's what does it for me. That kept me in the story. I could picture this process. It made sense to me how she was making the coffee. We got a little bit of her in there with that line back and forth about, them joking about the stockings. And that also showed like that relationship that was building between them too. Like just that those 2 lines is that lady stocking, Viv glanced at him, "It's clean, I don't wear stockings." Like that was so powerful and character building. And it was such a small little thing. So if there had been more of kind of those types of things in here, this would have taken the book from to like, okay, I really liked it. Like I would have given it like maybe like a 3. I would have doubled my score.
Yeah, yeah. I think one of the things that I was happy with how he described the characters or how he painted the characters overall
Mm-hmm.
was you had Viv, who obviously is sapphic because she ends up in a relationship with Tandri. That felt a little bit iffy to me, but like it was brewing and then it didn't really like solidify in the sense for me.
Yes. Yes.
But, with her, so she's sapphic, she's tall, she's muscular. I'm assuming because she's got the
Oh, yeah,
sword.
because we could see her hefting
Because
stuff
like
around,
her,
so we knew she
yeah,
had
like,
good, strong muscles. She talked about her back hurting, like, that, like,
yeah.
was a great
But
bit
like
of developing her.
in my head I'm and like also on the book cover and stuff, like she's not ogre as in Shrek, she's
Yeah.
ogre like bodybuilder.
Yes.
So
Yes.
you know body shape, body style, and stuff like that. And I think being a man writing this book, he very well could have fallen these tropes to where she was more of the butch kind
Mhm.
of
Mhm.
sapphic, and Tandri was more of the femme, seductor. Right? She's a succubus. He
Yeah.
very well could have fallen into those sapphic lesbian tropes of things,
Mhm.
but he didn't. You had Viv as she had a femininity about her. Even when
Yeah.
he was doing her voice, she had a femininity. Even though she was strong, she reminded me, who's that rugby player? You know
Ooh,
the
asking
rugby
the
player
wrong
I'm talking
person.
about? Okay, so she's an Olympic gold medal rugby player and stuff like that. Like where she is strong as hell. She is in a very tough sport, but she always has like this like femininity about her. She's not in the butch category. I don't know her sexuality, but like she doesn't have what we would stereotypically see a rugby. We think about like somebody who is is tall, she's broad, she's strong, like you would think that she's like more masculine sounding, more
Yeah.
masculine mannerisms and stuff like that, and she doesn't have it. And that's more of like how Viv is, where she is strong, and it's really nice and refreshing because it shows that being strong, being tall, being broad does not have to equate to masculinity. Like you can
Mm-hmm.
be feminine and be these things. And I really like that he chose that path with her, because being that he's a man writing a sapphic story, it would be so easy to cast the ogre as the butch, masculine lesbian, and
Yes.
the succubus as the sweet femme. And Tandri had some sass to her, right? Tandri
Oh,
had
yeah.
more of that, like, no, I'm not fucking with this
Like,
kind of
no.
energy, right? And she did not have that trope of a succubus to be like this, seductress, right? To have this like oozing with sensuality kind of
Yes.
vibe. She was just, nope, this is me. I'm just, she had an understanding of desire, which is what made her so good at marketing, which was a really cool
Yes.
way to paint and play with the succubus character, instead of her being something that was this highly sexualized character. She was like, no, I understand desire, and therefore I am naturally skilled at marketing. And I loved that aspect of it, especially like seeing how Viv does not understand. Like, she's just like, well, I know that, people have to know about the coffee in order to like want to drink the coffee. Like, I get that. But like, us coming from a marketing background, I feel like, reading Viv, we're just like, yes, this is the vibe. And I love how he made this her character direction, and not like, oh, and I'm just so beautiful and delicious, and don't you want to love me, Viv? She wasn't like
Yeah.
that.
Or like, wearing some little clothing, or are you sure you don't want another copy?
Mm-hmm.
Like using that hypersexualized thing. I think you framed that perfectly, that she understands desire and sensuality, but the way that she's able to step into it and own it within here was a great development for her character. So, like, we know that Tangerine, we find that she had gone to, like, the university there, and she was upset because basically they judged her for what she was, and she never got to step into
Yeah,
her
it was the
own.
discrimination aspect of things.
Discrimination, yeah. And
Yeah.
so she gets to actually step into who she is with a fresh slate with Viv, and help with this and that understanding of desire and that sensual nature of experience that people want to have. You can see that in the descriptions that she gives to food on their menu board. She just doesn't say like cinnamon roll. She'll write cinnamon roll with like this alluring description of the flavor palette that's inside of it. And you're like, ooh, I want that.
Yeah.
Because like in this world, they don't know what coffee or lattes are, cinnamon rolls, croissants, like all of these types of baked goods. This is totally new and novel to them. So having that kind of description, like it just adds to that desire factor. So yeah,
And
I
I
think that
like
that was
that it was
brilliant.
Tandri who had that component. It wasn't
Yes.
like Thimble, who's the one making the thing, right?
Yeah.
You have, and I think it really works very well of like the cozy component of community, right? That's like a
Yes.
common theme in cozies, is it's the building of community. You often start off with a character who's very used to being kind of on their own,
Mm-hmm.
very independent, didn't have a whole lot of connection prior, and then they build this like chosen family. And that's one of the things that I love. As a queer person, we are all about chosen family. So, I love that component of cozies. And he did a pretty good job with it, but I think it was interesting because instead of it usually being a little bit more of a like more family type of situation, more of like deep friendship kind of situation, oftentimes, right? Like I think about, the ones that have the same romance component to it. It's more of like, oh, well, this is ends up being my partner, like wife, right? Like
Yeah.
partner that way, with TJ Klune, with, what's you can't spell treason without T, like that series. That's a great one as well. But it's more of a family component as we would traditionally see family. But with this, he made it a chosen family that is about this team, it in a community sense of a business, which I thought was a
Yes.
really unique way of doing it, where you have her as the barista and visionary for this shop with Viv, and then you have Thimble as this culinary master who has minimal communication skills. And then you have Tandri, who has all the communication skills, right? She has the understanding and the ability of building this connection with the customers, who then end up becoming part of this entity. And so, I think it's a great representation of what these businesses can be, because I think about, as a queer person, having those locations that are your place where you connect with your people. Those community businesses are really important. A lot of times the community businesses for queer people is like a bar or a club or things like that, but it can also be a bookstore. It can also be like, I meet all of my queer friends at a cafe. We meet all the time, once a month together, and we chat and we catch up and stuff like that. And it's just like a huge queer community there that meet up at this cafe. And, but we need these locations. And the business owners being like people who are feeding this community aspect of things, right? Like I know a bookstore that's a sapphic couple who run a co-op bookstore. So the community participates in the success of the store. And it's really, really important. And it's not something that we see a lot of in books. So I really, really loved that component of the story.
Absolutely. You brought up such a great point of that, like, community aspect of that found family coming together more in terms of the business. And it's almost like, right before we know she had a team before. We don't know how close exactly they were all as a team, but now I feel like she's coming and she's assembling her new team, in a sense, right? She has all the people with all the different skills. And what's really nice too is that we see each of these people that she's bringing in, or creatures that she's bringing in, because only one of them is human, which is the musician. They are all...
Oh, really?
Yeah. The only one that's human
What
is the
about the
musician.
magic guy?
The
Is
magic guy. Oh, yeah, the magic guy. Yeah,
the
he's a human too.
is he
Yeah,
human?
so
I
I feel
imagine
like he's
him as
almost like
a
a
basic white
wizardy.
guy.
I don't know. I feel
I
like
don't
he's
know.
a wizard.
I pictured him as just like, because in the book he even has a British accent.
Yeah, I
So
forgot
I
about
just
him.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the guy who does the whole like ley line studies.
The ley lines,
Yeah.
yep. So, yeah, so we have like all these characters that come to her. They're a little like offbeat, right? Like for Cal, he's not really accepted in society, but he's found his home and comfort with them. Same for Tandri. She hasn't really had that. For the Radican, like, he's some culinary genius. However, I was confused with him because he comes in with his apron on that he's been doing baking, and he's known to be a culinary genius from like the mystery spice guy. And I'm like, what was he doing before? Like, wasn't he already a baker? Because he comes in every day with his like apron floury, and then all of a
My
sudden he's like, yeah, I'll
assumption
start
for
working
him,
tomorrow.
yeah, my assumption for him was that he just bakes for himself
Just for
and
himself?
his
Okay.
friends, like out of his house.
Yeah.
And like this was the first time he was given the opportunity to bake professionally.
Yes. Maybe he was like the like little sous chef for somebody else. And now he's like, I get to
Yeah.
have my own place. He was so
Yeah.
adorable. I think he was like probably my favorite character, that and like the dire cat that was in there. I love the dire cat. No shocker. But yeah, so Thimble was the Radican. He was my favorite character. Him and Amity, the dire cat.
The cat.
So
Yeah.
yeah, like and they were all able to find this. And at the very end of the book, right, there's a fire destroys the shop, and they have to rebuild. And when they rebuild, everybody comes together to help her. And all of that core group of people, she ends up making them all equal partners in the business, because she's like, I
Right.
couldn't
So
do
she
this
kind of
without
turns
you.
it into a co-op.
She turns it into, yeah. And so that's kind of right. That does a great job of showing her character arc of, I'm alone, I'm starting this alone, like, oh my goodness, to, wow, I really belong here, and I'm getting to put down roots, and I have all of these amazing people here to do it with me, and we're all on this equal footing now. So I think that was a great way to show that development. And we did get like some bits and bobs of this shift within the book for her, which I thought was really good. So like we have like this push and pull with her. So there is the madrigal in this book. And this is one of the things, like, I liked some of the stuff they did with it, and then I had like a whiplash moment with it. So we'll go into what I liked about them first. So they were good for character
I have
development.
opinions about the madrigal.
Okay. So yeah, I think there was good moments to show because Viv, basically I like to think of them like the mafia in the town, right? Like you pay us so nothing bad happens to your business, and like everybody's on the take, and they're like everybody around her's like, oh, you got to pay these people, you got to pay them, like you don't want to mess with them.
Yeah.
And so Viv is first like, well, I'm not dealing with this bullshit. Like she's like, but she's trying to hold herself back because she's like, this is a slippery slope. If I do something, number one, how is the community going to think about me if they just see me like beating heads in? Because I don't want to deal with stuff. Like, then is this going to tarnish their opinion of me? But also, if I do this one thing, how easy is it to do another thing and another thing and another thing and get back into that life that she does not want? And so she's trying to walk this fine line with them as they like keep coming to do a shakedown with her. And then like this just felt kind of a weird moment, right? So we have one of her buddies, the little dwarf guy, had given her a stone. He's like, toss this in the fire if you're in trouble, like whatever, like we'll come find you. And he brings the entire group that she had there, minus Fennis, who's going to be a bad guy we'll talk about. So brings them all there, and they sit down and have a conversation with her, and basically the whole conversation is, all right, well, you brought us here to do something to him instead for you, but you don't want us to do anything for him. So, like, what was the point of even having the people come there? Because they literally do nothing there. They literally do nothing at the end of the book either, except show up when the coffee shop's already rebuilt. So I thought it was a very weird moment. The only point for them was for one of them to say, I can set up a conversation with you, with the leader of this group. And I'm like, ooh, we're at the midpoint of the book.
Which she could have very well done.
She could have done that on her own.
Right,
Yeah, there
she
was
could have
no
just
need.
talked to the stone elf guy and just been like, hey, I need a meeting with this magical.
Yeah. With any of them, she could have been like, dude, just like set this up. We got to talk. And then my whiplash moment. So like we're like hitting this peak of like she goes and they're taking her freaking blindfolded underground to like go meet the madrigal. And I love that it was like a little old lady. I thought that was really hilarious. However, instead of getting shaken down for money, they come to an agreement that they can pay her in cinnamon rolls. And I'm like, what the shit is happening? Because number one, you were going to shake me down for like 20% of my profits, and you see I'm doing good, and all you want is my goddamn cinnamon rolls. Like, that was just so anticlimactic. I'm like, I don't even know. But also, Viv was like, this is wrong that she's shaking down everybody, but all of a sudden you're cool with her shaking down all of your neighbors for 20% of their profits, and all you're giving her is cinnamon rolls. Like, it just felt very against like Viv's like morals and ethics that she would be cool with this. Like, obviously she's excited her business not getting like shaken down, but it just felt very weird to me that all of a sudden now we're chummy with the thugs who are like being thugs to everybody else. And the cinnamon rolls.
I had a big problem with that as well. like it just was just like, all right, it's building. Okay, what?
Yeah.
That was my exact reaction. I'm like, really? All of these threats, all of this time of this
weapons.
Stuff. And see, right.
We're coming with weapons outside your shop.
I'll take cinnamon rolls. It's fine, girl. Are you serious? Like, you're just fine with, I mean, like, I know they're good, but really? And then also, like, I didn't even connect that whole component about, like, oh, and everyone else is still giving their 20%. And she's just giving cinnamon rolls. And she's just totally fine with these thugs still being thugs to everyone else who she now cares about. And so, it does not make sense for her character. And what I would have loved to see which is something similar that, I've seen in a few different cozies, right? You have this push and pull moment, right? You have this push and pull of like, well, I don't want my new friends to see all of the truth of me,
Mm-hmm.
right? What if they reject me if they see these pieces of me? And so you have that push and pull. And then whenever you have the moment where it's just like, okay, I'm gonna have to show all of me in order to do the right thing, then you do that and everyone accepts you in the end. And so that's a theme I think kind of shows up a lot in cozies because it's often right this chosen family component of things. And I love that. But what I would have loved to see in this book in regards to that would be to have her trying to hide these components, right? Maybe they suspect that she was a bounty hunter this whole time, or suspect that she, was some sort of enforcer this whole time or something like that, but they don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And, she's just intimidating. She's just an ogre who's very intimidating, who carries around the sword and da da da, right? But then she comes to this moment to where, okay, I can use my powers for good, and then
Yes.
she takes down this magical and
Yes.
she runs the thugs out and then she becomes the protector, right? Because their whole thing is like, oh, you got to peg up if you want protection and stuff. And it's just like, they don't need your protection now because they have her in town. And so what if she becomes this protector instead of this bounty hunter, instead of this enforcer? She becomes the protector. And so she's weaving in her past with her future and is planting roots there. And I think that would have elevated it so much more for me personally, because that would have been that moment of like, okay, this is all of me. Are you guys going to
Yes.
still love me, or are you going to be scared of me now?
That is
And
beautiful. Yes.
right? Like, I think that would have really elevated that part of the story a lot. And then it could have been when the fire happened, right? It could have been like, okay, I had to do this. And if they're scared of me now, if they don't want anything to do with me now after this, then so be it. But at least they'll be protected. I can always have another coffee shop. If they stop coming to my coffee shop, I can always build another one somewhere else. I'll just take the little stone and we'll do it fine. It'll be fine. And then whenever the fire does happen and the stone is stolen and everyone still shows up for her, that could have been that moment of like, see, I'm loved completely for who I am and they're not scared of me. They're still willing to like be my friends and treat me exactly the same. I think that would have really deepened the story components
Yes,
that were
if
missing for
that
me.
was it, that would have hit. That would have hit for me. Because, like you said, right, this is about self discovery and self acceptance for her. And she basically is completely sheds and hides who she used to be. The only reminder
Mhm.
we have is the sword. And I think that the way you gave of that journey on the story would have been perfectly mirrored with what happened with her sword, because the sword and so they have the sword hanging up on the coffee shop wall, and that's supposed to be have that up there because it will deter the thugs who now just want our stupid cinnamon rolls, right? So that like deterrence, like that is her still there, and like, she never has to pick up that sword again. She could find a different way from what she's learned to do the description that you gave of being able to say, no, we're not doing this. Maybe she gets everybody to rally behind her and they decide as a community over it,
Mhm.
right? We still could have done that in a cozy way. Didn't have to be a big brawl or anything like that. But at the end, after the fire, the sword becomes like this melted thing and it's deformed. And that's kind of like, we don't need the violence anymore. Like, I can leave that part of me behind, but it's still part of who I am. And they put that up on her new sign outside. And so I thought that was kind of a great way of she's not hiding it inside the shop anymore. It is now
Mhm.
front and center, but it has changed just as she has changed. So if we had that arc as you described, I think that would have made that imagery even more powerful of just that like subtle shift
Mm.
of the sword is still in here to I'm vulnerable and out here and I'm a new person, but that's still
Yeah.
part of me, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. That would have been really great to have it be a community thing. Like, okay, no, we're going to rally. Like, she's like ready
Yeah.
to be like, okay, I'll be the violent person again or whatever, and then like to have her chosen family, even just them, like rally behind
Mm-hmm.
her. And I can see like Tandri being like, well, I see that there's this and this and this and this and this that you're doing, and I can't imagine that so and so is going to be really happy about this and this and this. And then they're like, oh dang, you now have information, stuff like that. Like I can, because then and it would have been like, okay, I'm not in this alone, you know?
Yes.
But yeah, so I think that if those story changes had happened, it would have leveled it up a bit.
Yes. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I think a couple other things that I did like about the book is I really enjoyed the short chapters. Uh, that I'm a person who likes shorter chapters versus like a
Same.
chapter that takes an hour to read. I think that it kept the pace going. I do think
I've
that there
literally
were some.
DNF'd books because of long
Oh yeah.
chapters. Because I'm just
Oh
like,
yeah.
I can't handle putting a bookmark in the middle of a chapter. I don't know what it is, what like issue that I have with it, but I have a whole series I really liked. And then she made a couple of she did something towards the end of the book of the first book that frustrated me, but I continued with the second book and I was just like, no, I can't get behind this anymore. And I
Yeah.
DNF'd the book, even though like I liked the book, but the chapters were too long. And then the one moment of gratification that I got, you took it away instantly. I was freaking done. But
Oh.
I digress.
That's all right. Yeah, I'm reading the Wheel of Time books right now. I'm on like book 5 or 6, and it has such long chapters. But at least like she
Yeah.
has a lot of scene breaks in there, so that's helpful. Like in longer, if I have longer chapters, I don't mind if they do the scene breaks because I feel like that breaks the chapter up. I'm sorry, Loki is
Mm-hmm.
like all about stuff right now. He's just crashing into everything. But then I had my one issue with the short chapters here was there are tons and tons of scene breaks within, and some of the scene breaks it would have just like a paragraph, which for you
I would
listening,
not have known
you
that.
would not
Yeah.
have had that. But there would be, I guess, if you're watching, that doesn't really, or if you're listening, it doesn't help you. But there would be literally a scene break with a paragraph. And
Loki's
then
like trying to make out with you there.
he is. He's like, Mom, I
He
am
is
not getting
like,
enough
hello.
attention. But yeah, so if you were reading it, you would see this, and it's very jarring on the page, where you would have like the two like, little scene break things that she has, I'm sorry, he has, like this pretty, I can't see because Loki's in the way. There we go. So we have like this pretty little scene break
Yeah.
design. So you would have multiples of those, like sometimes on a page, because you would have like one
Mm.
above, one below, a scene break. Then we would go for like a few paragraphs, and on the next page there'd be another scene break, and it was very jarring. And I don't feel like all of those scene breaks were necessarily necessary. Like you
Yeah,
could have
because
just
I'm like,
continued
I'm
on.
listening to the book. Didn't
Yeah, I
it
was like,
it
that
didn't
could have
sound like
totally
a
gone
moment.
there.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. It's where it's just been like, and then the next day, da 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 da. Like, that's
yeah.
all we need. We don't need a full on scene break
Yeah, it didn't feel
for it. That's
necessary, and
weird.
then some of them, it's like, all right, if you have to put a paragraph into a scene break, was that actually necessary? That would be my editor hat. Like,
Mm.
is that paragraph really needed? Maybe, maybe not. Could you have done whatever that was in the previous scene or into the next scene? So that was really weird for me as far as reading it. But like you said, like for listening, you never caught on to it. And for me reading, I was like, we didn't need that at all. Oh my God,
Yeah.
Loki, you are too much. So hold on, let me get him down 'cause
He's like, I
he's
am the
disrupted my
cat of
chain of thought.
chaos. Of
Boy,
course,
come
I'm
here.
too much.
So something else that I really thought that Travis did an amazing job, and it was interesting too to see this in a cozy book, but he did it in a way that didn't take away from the coziness, was after the fire, he did an incredible job of showing shock from a psychological perspective of what shock looks like. And this just gave us like this part really immersed me into it because I'm like, I can literally feel the feels with her right now. And I thought this was beautifully done. And if I had more description of like her personality, just description in general of the book, like how he brought it to life in this, again, I would have loved it so much more. So she's sitting out on the curb. So after the fire, and there was really great description of this even before this page of her taking buckets of water and just going and filling and filling and filling and filling it and going back in and just kind of being like in this mindless zombie mode of just, she's not even aware of the physical pain that she's causing herself by walking over these ashes. But after that, I figure I won't read that one. I mean, it's not graphic or bad, but this was just another great spot of just showing shock in a subtle way. So Lack is one of the Goonies. And the Maradrill, she sent Lack and the Goonies over with some clothes and things for them. Lack murmured
Right,
something
because
to
that's
them.
what thugs do.
Because that's what thugs do. Thank you for my cinnamon rolls. Here, take this.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know. Lack murmured something to them that Viv didn't register, and then she stood staring at the clothes with only a dim comprehension. After that, Viv didn't remember sitting, but she must have done it so at some point. She stared dully ahead, vision blurred as her eyes watered from the smoke. A voice whispered, "No." Viv blinked in recognition. She turned her head and squinted at the unfocused shape of Thimble. Tangerine out before him in quiet conference, with Lainey's blanket puddling around her. Viv closed her eyes, and when they next opened, he was gone, and she didn't know how much time has passed. So, like, it just kind of goes on like that where, like, time is not moving properly. Like, she's there, but she's not there. The page before with her doing the stuff with the fire, like this was just such a powerful character moment for her of just showing her at her absolute bottom, but also showing someone in that trauma response of like she's out of her body and out of her mind and just going through the motions. And I thought it was just so well done in that post-fire scene for that. So I just really wanted to comment on that because it was incredible. From my psychology background, it was spot on. And he did it in a way, too, that didn't make us feel uncomfortable with it being within the realm of a cozy book either.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 You know what the funny thing is? You know, you're like noting like how good that those scenes were, right? And we've talked about how important that scene was about like the coming together after the fire to rebuild and how that, you know, really showed a lot of her character arc. So I had read this book in like 2024 with when I listened to it, and then we decided to do this. I started to read it again, started listening to it again, and I don't do well when I know the ending already. Like when I know what's going to happen, I lose interest really fast. So I'm not a usual person. I'm not a person who usually rereads books. I read it once, and I'm like, well, I've done that adventure. Even if there's a movie, right? There's a movie that was once a book. I have to read the book before I do the movie. Otherwise, I can't get behind them usually. Like I'm like, I know what happens though. Like the whole experience is ruined for me because I already know what happens. Any hoozle. It's really funny because so I DNF'd my second listen. And I just watched a recap to remember pieces of the book. And I had no memory of this fire.
I do have a funny thing to share about the fire that I was like,
right.
What? Mm-hmm.
Yeah. In my brain, the end of the book was the magical thing. In my brain. So when I had messaged you, I'm like, oh, I don't think you're going to like the ending. I was saying, I don't think you're going to like the ending because the moment of like everything happening with the magical, it was so unsatisfying for me that I'm like, oh, I know Rachel's going to hate that. And then it's like, oh, and there was a fire afterwards? Don't remember a fire. Like, it was almost like I was...
You're like, wait, did we read the same book?
Yeah, I'm like, it was almost like I was so unsatisfied with the way that the climax wrapped that I like checked out and I didn't retain, like I was just finishing it just to finish it and I didn't retain what happened afterwards. And so I watched that recap and I'm like, oh, I vaguely remember a fire moment. So I'm like, I'm glad you enjoyed that fire moment because I don't actually remember my reaction to it because I don't even remember reading it. But I know I did because I know I finished the book. I did not DNF it.
Yeah, so the fire moment, it was interesting. It felt very out of left field. So as a writer, we have Asimov's gun, right? If you show a gun on the first page, it better go off by the end of the story. So in the beginning of the story with the thugs, someone mentions, I can't remember the guy's name, it's like Keller or Kellen. He's the one who tries to like come onto Tangerine and she's like, get out of here. They have some kind of history that we don't learn about from the university. And he's like, oh, you better pay up or, you know, this place will burn down. And so I'm very curious in the epilogue part. If there was something super shady going on behind the scenes, I don't know. However, um, so we have we think it's building up that we're having this thing with the Madrigal who does not, and we're at the middle of the book, and I'm like, well, then what the hell's going to happen in the other half of the book? Like, I thought we were going to keep building tension. So then out of left field, Fennis comes in, and Fennis was part of Viv's crew. So what happened was Viv, on her last job, the only thing she wanted was this thing called the Scarlet Stone. And we learn as the story goes on that this is, legend says that it brings good luck. And so she buries this underneath one of the lodestones inside the cafe. And she chose that cafe specifically because of the ley lines, which I think were going to amplify the stone's effects or something like that. Fennis knows that she has it. And I believe he revealed it to the Madrigal. Yeah, she did. Because when they had the meeting, she's like, you know what I have. And I'm not going to give it to you. And the Madrigal's like, well, I don't even know if I took it from you, if it would do what I wanted it to do, and blah, 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 blah. So just give me the cinnamon rolls. So the Madrigal sends one of her men to tell Viv that Fennis is up to no good and basically watch your back. So she has the wizardy dude who does the ley line stuff set an alarm so that she would know if Fennis came in. So alarm goes off. She knows that Fennis came in, and the dire cat basically saves the day. And so that's another interesting thing too in this is something else always saves her from stuff instead of her saving herself, which I was like, it's more reactive than proactive. So the cat comes in, cat saves her, and then Tangerine learns about it, and she's like, all right, well, either you're coming to stay with me or I'm staying here until we figure out what's going on. And Viv's like, well, I'm not going to have him reset the alarm thing because it's a one-time use. He goes, if I reset it, Fennis isn't going to come back here on his own again because he already knows I know he's up to no good. Then next thing we know, I don't know if it was the next night or a few nights later, that's when the cat wakes them up and there's the fire and they have to get out. And it's a magical fire, so they can't put the fire out with water or anything like that. And Viv ends up breaking the door down, and she's concerned about getting Tangerine out of the fire more than she is about getting herself out of the fire. However, when she breaks down the door, she jumps out first, when the whole time she's like, I'm going to get you out first. And then she sees Tangerine still in there, so she jumps back in the building to get Tangerine and then takes her out. It was weird. So once the fire is done, she's like, all right, that's when she's in her shock state. And she's like, I need to go see if the stone is still there. Because Tangerine had told her, and I think someone else told her, that there could be a rebound effect of the stone. So for as much good luck you have, you could have bad luck. And she goes, I need to see if the stone has been taken. She gets there and the stone is gone. So we're assuming that's why it was able to burn down. However, we don't know who took the stone or when they took it. And the dire cat was sleeping in there the whole time. So I'm like, okay, who went in and got the stone and when did they get the stone? It's all very unclear because she assumed that Fennis would never do it and someone else would. So then we have the epilogue of the book where we find out that yes, Fennis did take the stone, and we find out the stone doesn't actually bring luck. It draws like to like. And so that drew these people into the community to join her in her adventure of starting this business and brought her family. So if he has it, it's just going to bring him more shitbags like himself and he'll get his just desserts. And I think that we could have ended it with that, knowing that he's going to get his just desserts. But we have an epilogue tossed in here. It's 3 pages long, and this is the only part of the book that is not told from Viv's point of view. This is told from Fennis's point of view, and we essentially have the thugs catching up to him and the dire cat catching up to him together. So the thugs and the dire cat all together, and basically it sounds like he either gets the shit kicked out of him or he gets killed. And they're going to take the stone for the Madrigal. In my mind, at first I thought maybe the Keller or Kellen dude, whatever, that had a problem with Tangerine who mentioned the fire. I was like, oh, well, maybe he went in and stole the stone for Fennis and they started the fire, but then the Madrigal would have had the stone and not Fennis. So the only one who could have gone in and gotten the stone would have been Fennis, but she said he never would have come back. So I was very confused by that. And then I was like, well, did the Madrigal set the fire to destroy the shop so she could get the stone, but the stone was already gone by the time the fire was set? So logically, I don't think the Madrigal was involved, but then when did Fennis get it and how did he get it? if there was no time for him to get it because they were always there or the cat was there. So it just
Also,
felt
he
like
didn't
that.
show up until like way later. So it's kind of odd for the
Yes.
villain that causes most of the calamity to come in so late in the book.
Yeah, I feel like he showed up at least a third or halfway through the book. Like,
Yeah.
he showed up way late to the page, exactly, and
Mhm.
he had so little page time that he seemed inconsequential. Like, I could understand if this was a mystery book and we have red herrings that are meant to throw us off from stuff. He would almost seem like a red herring, or maybe
Mhm.
the Madrigal was the red herring, but this isn't a mystery novel, so it felt very out of left field. It felt very disconnected, and I feel like for the coziness of the book, we could have just ended it with this beautiful ending between scene with Viv and Tangerine. I think that would have been like such a more satisfactory ending than having these extra 3 pages of seeing Finnis getting his just desserts.
I would have really
Yeah,
liked to have more development in their relationship. And I don't know if he
yes.
chose not to have more development because he didn't want it to be a romance book or because he didn't know how to write something that was a more tender, intimate, sapphic moment. And so he left it at just like, they kissed that one time and then they hugged that other time. And then they're kind of like, oh, maybe you should live here or whatever the moment
Yep.
was. Like I don't know if that's why he made those choices, but I would have really liked to have a little bit more of a deeper bond
Mm-hmm.
between Tandri and Viv develop in the end. So we could see, like, and now they're this romantic thing, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. Yes. Because it was really beautiful. Like in the beginning of the story too, we do see a little bit of this change that Tangerine sees that Viv is basically sleeping on like a pile of like her bedroll that she would have when she was traveling, and she didn't have a bed. Like she was just sleeping in the loft. Like this was a horse barn, I believe, that they converted into the
Mhm.
restaurant or into the cafe. So she was just sleeping up there in that spot. So at the end of the book, when they're remodeling, she asks Cal to redecorate up there, build something larger. And we don't know what it is until that very end scene where she has actually built 2 complete bedrooms upstairs. She has her room, which has a bed finally, furniture, not living on the floor anymore. And she has also built a room for Tangerine, which has like an art studio in it for her too, because Tangerine loves art during
Mhm.
this and is doing like their marketing design and all of this stuff. And so it's just such a beautiful moment to see that. And like you could just feel Tangerine like lighting up, like, oh my goodness,
Mhm.
like you see me and you understand me and my needs. And like, so it was just a really beautiful moment. And I would have loved it to end on that moment of this beautiful high
Mhm.
note versus then taking me into a character whose point of view we have not been in for the book because it's always just been hers. And then have kind of this, oh, okay, the cat's going to kill you moment. Like we already
Yeah.
knew something would happen to him.
Yeah, I think I agree having that moment and stuff. And I also think that like having the moment end between Tangerine and Viv in the loft, right? They're just like, "Oh, this is your room if you want it, and then this is my
Mm-hmm.
room." You know, and then they have like the hug and it's just like this tender moment and stuff. And then maybe the second book in the series develops that relationship more. How like, the whole first book has that subtle subplot of their
Yes.
relationship
Mm-hmm.
starting, but then the second one have a subplot of the relationship deepening and stuff. However, he also chose to do something very different with the way he took this series. And so you have Legends and Lattes that is, this now time. And then the next book he wrote was the before time. So it was like the prequel and it was the build up to her discovering coffee. And then the third book had to do with one of the characters from her like original posse. I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it might have been the villain, but I don't remember for sure. I don't know for sure. The villain from Legends and Lattes. So, like, we develop all this love for Tandri, for Amity. Wait, what's the cat's name?
Yeah, Amity. Yep.
Amity and
Mhm.
Thimble and Cal. And we were just like, oh, we just love these characters. And then we never see them again. And I'm like, no. No, I didn't read the other. My mom read the other two. She did have a hard time getting through the third book, the most recent book, which is really saying something because she is the cozy queen.
Yeah.
And so that was disappointing because I'm like, no, but I want more Thimble. I need more Tandry. Like, I want more
Yes.
of them. I want more of these people that I've now love. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't get that. And the other series that I know of that did this was The Spell Shop. I love The Spell Shop. I love that book. And then the second one came out, The Enchanted Greenhouse. I'm like, oh, another one. So exciting. And it is a different person who is very vaguely connected to the original person. And you never could really with the other story almost at all.
Yeah.
It's like a completely different island in a completely different section of the world. And there's just one tiny connection between the two. And I'm just like, I mean, I like it. It can stand alone for sure. But what about all these other characters? I miss them. I miss them. And so that, I don't know. Maybe it's a whole, it's like the new thing in cozies is that's what they're doing. They're like, but could we do that whilst continuing in the world? Like, can we do that to where like they're on the same island? Or,
Yeah.
like maybe we get the like thing with, Thimble's backstory and like connecting with Thimble. Like maybe Thimble has a whole storyline that goes. And so we're still in the same world. We're still with the same people. Thimble still interacts with Tandry and Viv and stuff, but we're getting a storyline revolving around him or something along those lines, because then we still get to be with our characters that we love. And so that was also disappointing because I really, really loved certain characters. I'm like, but I want to go back to see them, you know?
Well, and I think that like
So,
speaks to the characters of like we
mm-hmm,
did get connected with them and we want to see more of them because that was my thing. I wanted to see more of all of the characters on the page to bring them to life even more. Because we
mm-hmm,
did get little bits and bobs of things, but I don't feel that I got enough character depth for myself, especially with a book that's very character driven versus plot driven. I didn't have enough character to keep me engaged
mm-hmm.
in the story. I mean, I got to the end of the book and I still have no clue what Viv looks like except she's tall and she got her hair burned and I'm like, all right, well, I'm assuming your hair is longer than if you burned it when you were jumping through the flames, or was it short and you hit it because you were jumping out? Like, I don't know. I have
Yeah.
no clue. And so that for me was just so hard. I wanted to know more of what they looked like to get a little bit more of their personality. And it didn't have to be a lot. It could have just been a thing here or there, even in the dialogue. Like you listened to the book, so like you heard the characters very much as he was voice acting them.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, their voices within the book also very distinct. But a lot of times the voices were what we called like talking head, where it's just dialogue of them just going back and forth, which I think was probably more entertaining listening to it being voice acted. Where for me, it was just reading straight lines of dialogue without anything else. So like there, we could have added some stuff in there. So let's say we had like the scene where her team was there meeting with her and they're all talking back and forth and all it is literally dialogue of maybe a dialogue tag here or there of who's talking. So we could have had something where they're just doing little moments like Tandry might, come up and say something like, I called them all here. Tandra said as she was putting the coffee on the table. And then one of the other characters, they could have, said something while they were twirling a knife. Like just adding in some of these
Mm-hmm.
action beats in with the dialogue so that we can get a sense of what's happening versus just these people sitting static at a table. One person speaks, another person speaks, this person speaks. And that's all it is, which is easier to see. Like when you're looking at it on the page, you can see it very clearly of this and this and this because you don't have that nuance of the voice acting. But even with that, listening to it, I think it would have made it more visual for you too,
Mm-hmm.
of being able to see, you know, And it doesn't have to be every line of dialogue doesn't need an action tag, but throw something in here or there and don't have like a half a page of just literally just spoken word. Because it's just, you just kind of have this moment of there's just heads talking in a room. So that was kind of the last little thing that for me, I would have loved to see just some occasional dialogue or action beats in some of these longer sections of dialogue to add to character development and just to kind of make the story come alive a little bit more.
Yeah. Yeah. I can definitely see that because, I think about other books and how there's those moments with multiple people. It's more than just the two people
Mm-hmm.
talking and having, as he said, slumped in the chair, eyeing up Tangerine. Like those kind of moments give you a vibe of
Mm-hmm.
like what the room feels like, where you have this one guy over here and he's checking out one of the women and stuff, and you're just like, okay, so we have sleazebag, or something along those lines, because it gives you that sense, the air of in the room, whenever you have just those little pieces beyond what their words are. Because if you think about how we conversate, right, whenever we're in a place and we're talking to people and stuff, a lot of communication comes from body language. So when we're writing, we have to include the body language. We have to include, what it felt like in that room, because I know us as neurodivergent people, we have a whole different experience if and the room was hot, you could feel her clothes sticking to her back and stuff like that as she was saying, because then we're like, okay, so she's like a little agitated here maybe too,
Yeah.
or things like that. Like those tiny elements add a visceral component to the reading experience. And it's so important as writers to incorporate that, because although this is our world that we live in, right? This is the thing that's in our brain space. And so we know what all of the things feel like because it's coming from us. The reader doesn't have that. We have to provide it. And so slowing down and adding those little pieces and elements throughout the editing process, like maybe your first draft has just like talking head moments and stuff, but
Yep.
then you come back and you're like, okay, now we're adding more detail into things. Now we're adding more depth and substance. So what parts need this description? What parts need this body language, these little visceral components in order to add to the scene. So, and then we got another cat bomb. Here we are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is absolutely like you put it perfectly. Like we need to have that and like first draft, just get it down. And then you can go back and you can add those deeper levels. And then thinking too about the words we use. So something really simple like if I said I cried. Like, how did I cry? If I said I cried and you asked a bunch of people what that was, they could all tell you something different. Like, was I like just hysterically sobbing and like I couldn't breathe, like hyperventilating?
Right.
Was I like smiling, just had like these tears of joy coming down? Right? Like, there's so many different ways that we can describe things. Like, I think one of my
And
examples in
even if
there.
you're just being like concise with it, right? You can say
Yes.
it. If you're wanting to be concise but be clear, you say, I ugly cried.
I ugly.
Right?
Exactly.
Like I ugly
Yes.
cried,
I ugly
or
cried.
a single tear
Exactly.
rolled down my face. You don't have to have a paragraph of detail. Like it can
Yes.
just be a descriptive word.
Just a description, just add a couple more words onto that. Like same thing, right? Like we talked about someone was in a relaxed state and like that example you gave of like slunched into the chair, that's a relaxed state, but that shows us a bit of that personality. Like, either maybe he's bored or maybe like the character's a little cocky and he's like slumping down, like, yeah, like just take time to just tweak the words, add an extra word maybe. It doesn't have to be flowery prose, but it just takes it beyond the basic and gives us a little bit more about that character and what that emotion actually means and what you're intending it to mean versus what we're inferring from it from what we think about as a relaxed state or crying or something like that.
In our episode, we'll definitely go deeper into reading like a writer and how we can absorb these things. 'Cause I always tell people like the best teacher of writing is reading. And there is a stronger component of that when you're reading with your eyes, because that's how you're writing, right? Whenever you're writing, you're typing things out on a page. So when you're reading from a page, you're absorbing so much more that you can translate than if you're listening to a book. And I think that's a huge component in it. So yeah, but we'll get into that more in that episode.
So-
Did you have any final thoughts on Legends and Lattes?
So I think I would love to wrap it up with each of us sharing maybe something that we took away from this in the realm of reading like a writer, of something we liked from this book that we would use in our writing.
Okay, I got one.
Okay. All right, then you go ahead.
And I started the episode with it too. The things that he did to adapt modern world concepts into a mythological, medieval style world, I really, really liked. Marketing, right? How she did the marketing versus how we do the marketing, right? There was no TikTok. She did not have like it was a different way of building that marketing system, right? Of like how the coffee machine worked in these places to help you take your modern mind and translate things from that modern perspective into a medieval while keeping it something that a modern person can be like, oh yeah, I get how that works, and I love that that adaptation of it and stuff. So your cat.
Yeah, we have the third cat bomb. This is actually Lucky's first appearance on the podcast. It's very exciting.
I was like, wait, the fluff. I don't recognize all the
Loki
fluff.
got fluffy. Hi. He was just pawing at my leg. He's like, Mom, love me. He'll do that at night. He comes and he like pets my head and like wakes me out of a deep sleep to pet him at like 3 a.m.
So what was your favorite takeaway moment kind of thingy thing that you said?
So I really liked kind of as I was talking about the chapter structure. So I like that this is a cozy book and it could be very easy to get into really long chapters because we're like sitting in the moment, all that stuff. But I think that would have slowed the pace too much. So I like that even though it was a cozy book, it did have those shorter chapters. So that kept the pace moving along. And even though there were low stakes in the book, there was still a incremental buildup with those stakes. I wasn't satisfied with how it ended, but I liked how even within a cozy realm, we can still have a ramp up of something happening. So like, cause I am kind of this weird person that I like have cozy books I want to write. And then I have like dark, twisted stuff I want to write.
Right, dark epic fantasies.
Right, dark epic fantasies, like some gothic, like horror stuff. Like, I don't know why I have like this weird split personality with my writing.
The Gemini, that's supposed to be my trait.
I know, right? I don't know. And I'm like, oh my. So I think that I would love to keep like those kinds of principles in mind for my cozy work of, you know, I can have low stakes, but I can still have tension building up and I can play with pacing based on my chapter length and not bogging it down needlessly, but also knowing the level of detail that I like and I need, but that can still be done in a tight format.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think and I think as far as like cozies go, like if you are a person who's like, this whole cozy adventure sounds fun, I'm not sure I would recommend this as your first cozy, especially if you're used to reading more epic fantasy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the world building if your character's not quite there, if you're used to that, because that's kind of my realm, and I think that's why this didn't hit as much for me, especially with me coming off of like being on book 5 of Wheel of Time, which those books are like 1,000 words or more book. So there's lots of description.
1,000 words,
and world building. Yeah. Or 1,000 words, 1,000 pages. Yeah. Sorry.
I'm like, that felt like a typo. But yeah, I think if you're like, I do want to get into cozies, but I'm not so sure about this one. If you want a cozy book recommendation to start your journey, I love, if world building is important for you, the Encyclopedia of Fairies has great world building, especially because like it is about specific worlds in fairy. Like they're specific, right? You have like this like snowy winter kingdom, and then you have this like very like spring kingdom and stuff like that. And so especially she builds lore. Like she literally has lore in it, and it is a wonderful book to listen to. If you like listening to books, if you like how somebody does the voices, wonderful book to listen to. So that big fan of that. And then also another one that has great world building is the House in the on the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. Also it's a great cozy. So that one is more queer. So if you're like, give me something a little gayer, House on the Cerulean Sea, I don't know, by T.J. Klune is a little bit queerer, whereas, anyways, not that there's not any queer representation in Heather Fawcett's work, because there is. The Encyclopedia of Fairies does have some great queer representation, but it's a little bit more focused in T.J. Klune's work. So those are 2 recommendations if you're looking at cozy fantasy and you're like this. Did you have any?
I think you kind of hit on mine. Like a lot of my cozies that you didn't mention are more cozy mystery. So not quite for this group if you're into the cozy fantasy, but all of the ones you recommended are ones that are on my TBR list. And they are all ones, that I have heard recommended multiple times from other people. And I told them what book that I was reading. So yeah, those are great recommendations.
Yeah, especially like when it comes to having also the Spell Shop has a great world. Like that one is actually, I would say, closer to high fantasy. You know how this one's a little bit more, has like the deeper fantasy, like way less urban kind of moments with like the D&D style creatures. The Spell Shop has that similar type of high fantasy world with a cozy story, and I really, really, really liked the Spell Shop. That's a really good one as well, and you're gonna love that one, because I think you're going to really see yourself in the main character.
Ooh, all right. That's going at the top of the list.
Really giving a Virgo on the spectrum. So
ultimate combination.
Yeah. So those are I think good recommendations for a cozy fantasy if you're used to high fantasy and you just want something that's like a little easier and simpler and sweeter. And cuz I tell you what, I'll go down these like moments of like dark high fantasy, and then I'm like, oh, this is so good. Like I went through a binge of the Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, and I just like, it was, oh, those books are so dark, so incredibly written because it's R.F. Kuang, and of course it's well written. Oh my gosh. That she has got to be an author that we go down one of these story spirals with one of her books, because man, you read her books and you're like, well, I know that she has just one big giant beautiful brain. So anyways, I'll go down those things and I'll need a palate cleanser, because I'm just like, I can only do dark for so long, and then I'll go to a cozy to like be like, okay, let me get back into like a cute little vibe before I dive into the next dark thing. So yeah. Anywho, I hope you all enjoyed this episode. If you have any things about Legends and Latte that you have an opinion about that we didn't note, and you're like, but this was so wonderful, or this could have been better, or whatever, drop it in the comments. We're very interested in your opinion. If you have any book suggestions, or like, hey, I really want you to do a story spiral about this thing, drop it in the comments, because we want to do a big variety. We already have a nonfiction on our list to do. We're deciding on a memoir to do. We're looking at some classics, so we're going to do some Agatha Christie. So we have a nice big broad thing. We're going to go down these story spirals and just kind of give you our 2 cents and what we pulled from them and how we thought they could have been better or what they did really well, all that jazz. So I hope you enjoyed this episode. Please like, share, comment, download, do all of the things, and we'll see you in the next one. Thank you for listening. Check out the show notes for details and links from the episode. And don't forget to subscribe and follow for more. Special thanks to our composer, Micah Silverstein. Enjoy the rest of the music.